I've visited one Roma settlement on the outskirts of Bucharest, Jilava, to try to find out for myself what it is that has hampered the economic development of this extraordinary ethnic group. We're going to see a house here in the shantytown district of Jilava. We're walking through puddles. It's very muddy here, and the house is effectively it looks like a ruin, really. We're treading across the courtyard. There's old clothes, rags in the corners. Part of the building's not complete, and we're just stepping over the threshold onto, there's just an earth floor and some children there. Hello. There's a single-room house. It's concrete walls with a wood-burning stove in the corner. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 children, 7 children, and the owner of the house. Very, very poor conditions. There's shoes and bits of clothing. Beds have got pretty dirty old mattresses. The one thing that is nice is it's pleasantly warm here from the wood-burning stove in the corner. Wow. BBC. Petre, how long have you lived in this house?
For 15 years.
You've lived here for 15 years. Who lives here with you?
Children, wife, and me.
How many children do you have?
And 8. 8 children.
And the children go to the school here, just up the road?
Două fete.
Just the 2 girls go to school.
And what do the boys do?
Nu certificate.
Neither the girls have birth certificates, but I asked the director very nice to take them in school, so they're in school.
And is someone helping you get birth certificates for the children?
No.
No.
But they will need that.
Yes.
Danuț Dumitru is a Roma activist who runs the Roma Education Fund here in Romania. He offered to introduce me to what he considers to be the key challenges his community face.
No heating, no electricity, no property documents. It's quite difficult to describe how those children from those families are living right now, and how we can ask them to go to the school if they don't have proper clothes. Because they don't have socks, they don't have anything, and it's quite chilly outside. 500 years Roma population were slaves. You cannot eliminate slavery without giving anything in place. And now we are talking about integration. In 164 years after the slavery, we cannot ask a number of 10 generations of people which were not asked to go to school, which were not promoted to go to school, or they were not having a piece of land to speak about integration. We can't do that. I'm going to drive you through Jilava in order to show you all the places that people are living and the way they are living right now. The number of houses that we are looking at right now are houses which are not having documents on the property. People who has no ID, people who has no birth certificate. Children who cannot be enrolled in the kindergarten or in the school because they have no documents. More than that, you can see the living conditions of these children. Due to the economical situation of the family, they cannot really come in the kindergarten clean with clean clothes, as you can see where they are living, with a lot of garbage around. It's very difficult to have them in the classroom due to the smell, to the dirty and anything else. And you jeopardize actually the health of the other children, even though we had many feedbacks from the teachers that they cannot really run the normal class because of the smell of the children. I do believe that it's more unwillingness of solving the Roma issues.
Danuț talked there about the exclusion of the poorest Roma children from mainstream education. That, of course, has a huge social and economic impact on them and their families, and eliminating this one single obstacle has become a key ambition of one of the world's richest men. George Soros has poured over $200 million into Roma educational projects, including this one, the Matiaș Daycare Centre, where I've come to meet him. A convoy has just arrived here in the main street in Jilava. George Soros, accompanied by the European Education Commissioner and senior Romanian government officials. They're just going into the daycare centre now. We're in the room now. There are children in their very best clothes sitting around drawing. Good morning. And Mr. Soros and the Education Commissioner are just meeting the children. Holding a child here who's drawing something for Mr. Soros, trying to give him a drawing.
They have now, hopefully, a chance to make it in the world. So that will make a big difference. Unfortunately, the scope of the activities is not adequate for the size of the community. We've got, I think, 50 schools of this kind in Romania, but that's not enough.
Only a stone's throw from Jilava's very poor Roma community is this street, lined with ornate villas with Chinese-style roofs. Another Roma clan live here, the Calderaș, self-styled aristocracy of Romania's Roma. The women wear traditional long dresses and headscarves, the men drive expensive cars. Opels, BMWs, there's even a Porsche in that driveway over there. The sheer contrast of wealth and poverty within Romania and among the Roma themselves is striking. It begs the question, shouldn't the Roma be doing more to help themselves? They already are, says Damian Dragici, a former musician and one of the most prominent Roma politicians in the country.
Get us educated and use us as a resource. Don't think of us as the beggars. We are not beggars. I don't think anyone is naturally born as a beggar. I've been a beggar about 25 years ago when I left Romania, but I've done it as a need, and then I move forward. So if we can give the Roma a chance, I can assure you that in 20 years from now, we're going to see amazing miracles on the Roma issue.
That was Senator Damian Dragici. After leaving Bucharest earlier this week, George Soros travelled to London, where Evan Davis caught up with him to talk to him about his new book, The Tragedy of the European Union, Disintegration or Revival.
The euro is here to stay because Germany wants it to be here, and they'll do whatever they have to do to keep it there. The trouble is that they only do the minimum, and because of that, the divergence between the debtors and the creditors is getting worse and worse.
And you think maybe the best thing that could happen would be Germany to leave and there to be a euro for the other countries?
Well, that would have been a very good solution, but it's no longer on the table. And you're facing long-lasting stagnation. And unfortunately, the European Union may not survive it, because, there are many nations that go through long periods of stagnation, but they get out of it, they pass, they remain. Japan just had 25 years of it, and now is desperately trying to get out from exactly the situation that the euro is just moving into.
And you, in the book, well, you blame Germany, really, for pretty well all of this. So in fact, it's surprising to some of us how much blame you attribute to Germany, which is the strongest economy, of course.
I'm not really blaming Germany, because Germany is not doing this intentionally. That's what makes it a tragedy. And you can see it right now when the economy is picking up a little bit. It's only because Germany is moving ahead, but Italy is still sinking.
But let's talk about the politics of this, because it's the politics that'll get really nasty. And I wonder how worried you are about the politics and the responses of voters in countries around Europe who find themselves locked in stagnation.
Yeah. The financial crisis, the acute crisis, is over. And from now on, we are going to have political crises. And there are two particular issues. One is the euro problem, and the other one is actually Britain's membership in the European Union.
Talk about the first one, because I want to get to the British membership issue. But the first one, how worried are you that, for example, parties on the far right of European politics will be the winners out of the economic situation that will prevail?
Well, they'll get 1/3 or so of the seats. That's still a minority. But such a big minority is bound to affect the behavior and the policies of the majority. And that's what's disturbing.
What's your advice in the European countries to the mainstream parties who see parties on the far right with populist appeal of one kind, bashing immigrants or bashing European institutions? How should they behave? How should David Cameron in this country behave to UKIP?
Well, any sensible politician would try to preserve the current position, if at all possible, because Britain actually has the best of all possible worlds right now, being a member of the common market and not being a member of the euro. So it's a question of how do you appease the anti-European wing of your own party.
Do you stop the far right by moving to the right to take their votes away, or do you stop the far right by arguing against them and perhaps even moving a little bit more to the left? I'm just interested in your tactics.
I argue very strongly that Europe has to recapture the original idea behind the European Union, because that was an inspiring idea. I'm still a believer in it, and I think that Europe lost it because this euro crisis has converted what was meant to be a voluntary association of equal sovereign states that sacrifice part of their sovereignty for the common benefit into a relationship between debtors and creditors, where the debtors can't pay their debt and therefore are dependent on the mercy of the creditors, and that creates a two-class system.
Let's move on. There's interesting, the title of your book is The Tragedy of the European Union. It's not about the Roma people, but we know you have a concern for the plight of the Roma, the worst case of ethnic discrimination and exclusion in Europe, you call it, and you work with your foundation to try and help the Roma people. I wonder how bad you think the plight of the Roma is. How would you describe it relative to other humanitarian crises around the world?
Well, most people have no idea what inhuman conditions Roma actually live in. If they went out, they could see it and they would be shocked. However, I'd like to insist that the European Union is actually the mainstay of the people who are really doing something about it. So it just shows you how important having the European Union is. They do now have a Roma policy, and they're actually spending billions of dollars. It doesn't affect the conditions on the ground because it takes time to change those conditions, and it mainly involves taking the Roma children from the kindergarten up and giving them a decent education and helping them to move out from those conditions. And that's the work for generations.
I do want to ask you a question about Ukraine. I'm sure you have a lot to say about Ukraine, but I just want to know whether you think the Russians have now spent so much, are spending so much in Britain, in maybe one or two other centres, that it becomes too expensive to take sanctions against Russia.
Well, if you impose sanctions, they are going to impose opposing sanctions. But actually, you may have more Russians coming here as a result because they are not happy there. The Russians' own national interest doesn't coincide with Putin's personal political interests. And there are a lot of Russians who are critical of Putin on patriotic grounds, and they are right. And I think there is a great European interest to reinforce that and to prove it right. And then you will have not only Ukraine could develop into a very good contributor to European prosperity, but Russia also.
We've covered a lot of ground. George Soros, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
If you've got views on the programme, then share them with us. Our email address is world.business@bbc.co.uk, or we've got the past month's programmes for you to listen to at our own website, bbcworldservice.com/business daily.